Hey everybody, it's SeedButter. Welcome to the Disturbing Paintings Iceberg. I hope you enjoyed the video today. Also, if you're a fan of the channel, make sure to stick around until the very end of this video for some important channel announcements. For everyone new here, again, I hope you enjoyed the video and I really encourage you to subscribe to my small channel for a variety of unique, fun content that I know you'll enjoy. That's all for now, so let's get right into the video. Art can express so many beautiful things about the world. Sometimes, though, the bad is a lot more powerful than the good. Scenes depicting human violence, raw emotions, and other horrors of this world painted on canvas are truly fascinating, especially given the general expectation for art to be happy and uplifting. These disturbing pieces are the ones we'll be talking about today, in an iceberg created by u/Mahino Detective, which highlights plenty of these pieces of art. I can't wait to get into these today, but I do first want to point out that a lot of these paintings are disturbing, hence the title of this video. There's stuff on here that's a little bit more gruesome than what I usually look at, so just be aware. Also, guys, I want to throw out there that I am terrible at pronouncing names, which, if you've been subscribed for a while, you absolutely know by now. So please give me some slack on this video, because there's a lot of names in here that I just don't know how to pronounce. With that said, let's get right into this video. The Scream. The Scream is a painting that you've all probably seen at one point or another. Created by the Norwegian artist Edvard Munch in 1893, it has since become one of the most iconic pieces of art ever, often being viewed as a symbol of human anxiety. Now, why exactly did Munch paint something intended to be so anxiety-provoking yet so universal? Well, in a diary entry dated to January 22nd of 1892, Munch wrote, "One evening I was walking along a path. The city was on one side and the fjord below. I felt tired and ill. I stopped and looked out over the fjord. The sun was setting and the clouds turned blood red. I sensed a scream passing through nature. It seemed to me that I heard the scream. I painted this picture, painted the clouds as actual blood. The color shrieked. This became the scream." Interestingly, the location where this walk happened and also the setting of the painting was actually discovered by scholars. It's located on a road above Oslo. Now, what exactly made this place, the sky, and the clouds look so red and harsh? Well, that's been the subject of scholarly debate for years, and there are some explanations. The location was nearby to both a slaughterhouse and an asylum, and Munch's sister was actually hospitalized in one, which might have contributed to Munch's mood at the time. Another idea that might have been the inspiration for this painting is an eerily similar mummy on display in Florence, Italy around the time of the painting's creation, though that was eventually disproven, as Munch did see the mummy, but after he created the painting. He made a couple versions of Scream, one of which contains an infamous note written on it reading in Norwegian, "Could only have been painted by a madman." It's almost certain due to infrared handwriting analysis that Munch wrote this note, likely due to some disappointment he felt after receiving criticism of the work, given that mental illness ran in his family. Medusa. Medusa was created by Michelangelo Merisi de Caravaggio in 1597. It was commissioned by an Italian diplomat to be sent off to the Grand Duke of Tuscany. It was actually painted on a decorative shield. The painting itself shows Caravaggio's own face plastered on the head of Medusa, showing an appalled expression at the moment she was beheaded by Perseus. It stands out amongst his work for its realism and violent nature. The Face of War. The Face of War by Salvador Dalí was created in 1940 following the Spanish Civil War and just preceding the Second World War. It shows a skull hovering in a barren desert, with each of the skull's orifices containing more and more similar skulls, seemingly going on infinitely. Dalí's handprint can be seen in the corner, and the skull itself is being swarmed by a mass of snakes. This infinite replication of skulls shows the far-reaching implications of war, showing that even if a war is finished, the pain lingers on for an eternity, or perhaps that wars just keep happening. The Spanish Civil War was a huge inspiration for Dalí, and for a time he actually considered his own work to be a premonition of war. The Ugly Duchess. The Ugly Duchess, also known as a grotesque old woman, was painted by Flemish artist Quentin Matzies around 1513. It shows a woman wearing a headdress that, at the time, was out of style, but was once used by a young aristocracy. She's also holding a flower, indicating that she's looking for a suitor. It's theorized that this painting is a satire about material culture, but also interesting theories suggest that it actually depicts someone with Paget's disease, a condition that involves cellular remodeling of bones. But what is potentially the most fascinating detail about it, however, is that it was possibly inspired by a painting from Leonardo da Vinci. These two artists often shared drawings with one another. In 1490, da Vinci made a set of drawings called the Grotesque Heads. It's thought that maybe Da Vinci sent these sketches to Matisse, who made the Ugly Duchess afterwards. But it's also possible that the grotesque heads were inspired by sketches made originally by Matisse. No one really knows who came up with the concept first. Saturn devouring his son. Saturn devouring his son is a painting created by the Spanish artist Francisco Goya, depicting the ancient Greek myth of Cronus, also known as Saturn, devouring one of his children. It's one of 14 paintings made directly onto the walls of his house, which we'll be talking about frequently in this video. Various interpretations of this violent, cannibalistic artwork have been made, such as it being a symbol for the wrath of God or even the political situation in Spain. Other explanations look at Goya's family life, particularly the fact that only one of his 6 children survived until adulthood. There are no notes about this artwork, probably because it wasn't commissioned nor shown off by Goya in his lifetime, so we really don't know what he had to say about this painting. Hell, 1485. Hell, painted in 1485 by Hans Memling, is one painting in a 6-part artwork titled Earth, Vanity, and Divine Salvation. The work consists of double-sided panels that display a sequence, beginning with vanity followed by death, hell, memento mori, Christ in majesty, and a coat of arms. The one we're most concerned with, though, is hell. You could probably guess why it's on the iceberg. This bat demon thing with a face on its stomach stands atop burning humans, all of which are being swallowed by some monster serpent. It's a pretty creative depiction of hell. The Nightmare. The Nightmare is a 1781 painting by Swiss artist Henri Fuseli. It depicts a sleeping woman with some sort of demon crouching on her chest, with a horse peeking its head through a curtain. It was actually such a popular painting that the artist made more versions from different perspectives. So what do they even mean? Well, it might have something to do with the artist who made a marriage proposal that got rejected. It's theorized that the painting tries to examine a one-sided love that simply can't be. The Anguished Man. The Anguished Man is a strange painting, with the artist actually being unknown. It's a pretty modern painting compared to other ones on this iceberg, but we're not really looking at the painting itself. We're concerned with the story behind it. The current owner of the painting claims that he inherited it from his grandmother, who told him that the artist created the painting by mixing his own blood into the paint, and soon after the artist made the piece, he passed away. The owner has concocted a whole story about how the painting is haunted, even uploading videos to a YouTube channel showing crying and moaning noises heard from his house. It's a pretty popular story that you've probably heard somewhere or another on the internet, and it's a pretty cool entry for this iceberg. Death and the Miser. Death and the Miser is a painting by Hieronymus Bosch, an artist with plenty of unsettling pieces to his name, made sometime between 1490 and 1516. It's part of a triptych, or a threefold painting, kind of like the one we talked about earlier, though the centerpiece is missing. The title makes it clear that the subject of the painting, the miser, was an unethical moneylender, which is perhaps leading to consequences in the next life. Death peeks around the corner with an arrow aimed at the man's heart, while other characters are littered about. It's possible that he was once a knight given the armor in the corner, leading to the very interesting interpretation that the man shed away his courage and bravery in exchange for greed and the pursuit of money, because it led to a better lifestyle. A sad story that is, unfortunately, all too human. Or it might even mean that society cares more about money than bravery. Regardless of how you look at the painting, it's both beautiful and disturbing. Study of the Heads of Torture Victims. This piece, painted by Theodore Géricault in the early 19th century, depicts 2 victims of torture who were eventually killed off by a guillotine. Géricault often painted severed body parts in his works, so this sort of violence wasn't new to him, but the way the loose brushstrokes show a decapitated head is pretty intense in this piece. The artist is speaking out against the brutal form of execution used frequently during the Bourbon Restoration in France. Dante and Virgil. This is an 1850 painting from the French painter William Adolphe Bouguereau. It depicts a vivid scene from the Divine Comedy where Dante and Virgil witness 2 souls locked in eternal combat. The 2 souls belong to Capaccio and Gianni Schisi, one a heretic alchemist and the other a trickster, who are both damned to this existence forever, witnessed by our 2 travelers and overseen by a demon. The expressions on their face are particularly intense and stand out to me personally in this painting. The Death of Marat. The Death of Marat is a very personal painting created by Jacques-Louis David in 1793, following the death of his friend Jean-Paul Marat, a French revolutionary. In real life, Marat was a member of the Montgards, a radical faction during the French Revolution. He was stabbed to death by a political enemy named Charlotte Corday while he lay in his bathtub. He was writing for his newspaper at the time. The painting, made by David, Marat's friend, was made not long after his death, accurately depicting the scene, even the newspaper. Though this isn't an actual quote from the last newspaper Marat was writing, it states in the painting, quote, "Given that I am unhappy, I have a right to your help." The painting itself might not be that disturbing, but coupled with the tragic backstory of an artist losing their friend and recreating the scene for the world to see is terrifying. Judith beheading Holofernes. Judith beheading Holofernes is a painting from Caravaggio, who we talked about earlier. It depicts the scene where the widow Judith led Holofernes, the Assyrian general, to her tent after dinner where, once he passed out drunk, she beheaded him. It's possibly inspired by an actual beheading that Caravaggio witnessed in 1599. Flaying of Marcius. The Flaying of Marcius is a 16th century painting from the artist Titan. It's likely unfinished and is one of the artist's last paintings. It depicts Marcius, a satyr who challenged Apollo to a musical contest, being skinned alive. A very basic, yet commonly accepted interpretation of this painting is that it's trying to show the consequences of challenging God. It shows how unfortunate hubris can be for those who are rash. Mask Still Life 3. Here's a really interesting one and a more modern entry. Painted in 1911 by Emile Nold, Mask Still Life 3 is an expressionist work featuring masks with different expressions and emotions. It's emotional and tense, depicting anger, sickness, and jealousy. Given that it's an expressionist work, it's pretty difficult to pin down a detailed meaning behind this painting, but the presentation is certainly disturbing. Saint Wolfgang and the Devil. Saint Wolfgang and the Devil is one of the most interesting paintings on this iceberg today. It depicts, well, Saint Wolfgang and the Devil, who is shown in a really strange way, green and bat-like, with a face on its butt. The painting itself doesn't say much, but it depicts the legend of Saint Wolfgang. The story goes that one day Saint Wolfgang wanted to build up a church, but he needed help. He asked people around, but nobody would assist him. Finally, the devil walked his way, and he asked the devil for help building the church. The devil was initially confused as to why someone would ask him of all people, but Wolfgang thought it would be fine in the end. The devil agreed, but on the condition that he would get the soul of the first person who went through the door. Wolfgang obliged, but later a hunter chased a wolf through the door. So the devil was unable to get a human soul, or rather an animal one, and he was infuriated. The painting seems to display the two making their initial deal. It shows the ironic nature of a priest asking the devil for help, perhaps signifying that there are lots of perils that humans will willfully accept in the pursuit of a goal. The Hands Resist Him. This is another modern addition to the list. This painting was created in 1972 by artist Bill Stoneham. It shows a female doll standing next to a young boy who was based off the artist himself at the age of 5. Behind them stands a glass door with dark hands pressed against the wall, representing the boundary between the real and fantasy world. According to the artist, the doll is escorting the boy through the divide between reality and fantasy, while the hands represent different pathways the boy could take. Now, regardless of whatever the heck this is supposed to mean, it looks creepy as all get out, and because of this, it was the subject of an internet urban legend around 2000 when the painting was sold on eBay. Let's look into how this came to be. So, in the 70s, this painting was on display at a gallery and was eventually purchased by actor John Marley, famous for his role in The Godfather. Sometime after that, the painting ended up in the house of an elderly couple in California, though I don't know how it made it from Marley to them. In 2000, they put the painting up on eBay, describing how it was haunted, going so far as to write on the sale page that the painting moved. Further, they tried to say that the boy was trying to leave the painting, but the doll threatened him with a gun, and the seller specifically removed themselves from all liability due to damages from the painting. Naturally, this sparked the internet's curiosity, requiring the artist to actually step in and explain that the item in question wasn't really a gun, but did point out that both the gallery owner where the painting was displayed and the first art critic to review the painting died within a year of coming into contact with it. So maybe it is haunted, who knows? Women Laughing. Also known as Man Mocked by Two Women, this is a 19th century painting made by Francisco Goya painted directly onto the walls of his home as he neared the end of his life. Because of this, not much is known about this painting's true meaning. It's theorized that these women are prostitutes, and there's some more ideas about it that you can look into on Wikipedia because they're not necessarily PG, but there's really no answer to what's going on here. One way or another, the work is pretty disturbing, and it won't be the last Goya painting that we talk about today. The Ghost of a Flea. The Ghost of a Flea is a miniature painting made by William Blake. It's only a couple inches wide, but shows a grotesque, muscular demon-like figure who appears to be drinking from a bowl of blood. Unfortunately, due to some painting techniques used by Blake, like using liquid gold, the painting itself is in terrible condition nowadays, but it is quite interesting. Head of a Guillotined Man. This creation, made by Theodore Géricault, was actually based off a real-life experience that he had while examining a dead body. He often went to the morgue to study human anatomy, which is totally normal behavior. But at some point, he ran into a decapitated man who, in France at the time, was probably just a common criminal. The painting itself seems to show a unique living anguish in a very dead person. Study after Velázquez's portrait of Pope Innocent X. I really like this one. This one is actually pretty disturbing without just showing gore or a demon. This painting is a 1953 creation by Francis Bacon, an artist with plenty of disturbing artwork under his belt that we'll be talking about a bunch today. It reimagines this painting, Portrait of Pope Innocent X from 1650, but distorts it into this terrifying image. Funnily enough, Bacon admitted that he had nothing against popes, but he just wanted an excuse to paint a royalty-like figure to be able to use the color purple. Now, the meaning of this painting has been hotly debated, and it's been a subject of scholarship for many years. Around the time, Bacon, a self-proclaimed atheist and Nietzschean, was mourning his dead father, who was a cold disciplinarian. This leads many to believe that this painting somehow symbolizes the sort of killing of a father figure, or, in the Nietzschean tradition, the killing of God through killing his human representative on Earth. Bacon himself found these interpretations to be too literal, and offered up the explanation that he was just trying to triumph over Diego Velázquez, the artist of the original Pope painting. Guernica. Guernica is a Picasso and a pretty well-known painting that probably could have been a little higher up on the list, not because of its lack of disturbing qualities, but just because of how popular it is. It's one of the most well-known anti-war paintings in history. After hearing about the bombing of Guernica, where nationalist Spain, with the help of Italians and Nazis, bombed civilians, killing anywhere between 100 and 1,500, Picasso based this painting off the event. Somber colors show off agonized faces. The mural is also filled with symbols like the light bulb representing a sun and the broken sword standing in for the defeat of the people. It's certainly very disturbing. Big Electric Chair. Big Electric Chair is a piece from Andy Warhol created in 1967. I believe it's a photograph that was then painted on top of. The empty chair is a metaphor for death, specifically speaking out against the controversial death penalty that was used in New York City at the time. Though it's a simple picture, when you think about everything that happens during an execution, it's pretty brutal. Girl with Death Mask. Girl with Death Mask is a 1938 painting by Frida Kahlo. It shows a 4-year-old girl, modeled after Kahlo herself, wearing a Day of the Dead mask. She stands alone in a field, accompanied only by another mask, this one with the face of a tiger. It was painted during a difficult time for the artist who had recently miscarried. It speaks on the inevitability of death, even for the young. The Dead Mother. The Dead Mother is another painting from Edvard Munch. It's pretty cut and dry, showing a little girl reacting to the passing of her mom. Much like Scream, it seems to depict the anxiety of the little one who's now alone in the world. It can speak for much more than just that, though, showing off what it feels like to be alone and scared. Now, there's also another painting called Dead Mother from 1910 by an artist named Egon Schiele. I'm not sure which one the Iceberg is referring to, but either way, I just wanted to throw that one in there for sake of clarity because it is pretty terrifying. Anatomical Pieces. Anatomical Pieces is another piece by Theodore Géricault, and if the last two paintings from him haven't given it away yet, this guy loves painting body parts, particularly ones that aren't attached to people. This painting is literally just some arms. Now, the inspiration behind this story was a lot more than just that, though. It was inspired by the tragedy of the raft of the Medusa. In 1816, the Medusa crashed, leading to 135 survivors drifting on a float for 12 days. Many died in torments of thirst and starvation, and actually became cannibals as they tried their best to survive. Personally, I have no idea how you could become a cannibal in just 12 days, but that's just me. Now, in part because of the cannibalism, France was horrified by the incident, and so was Géricault, who spent long hours talking to survivors of the tragedy, trying to figure out how best to represent it in this painting, which I think he did pretty well. Man proposes, God disposes. This entry right here might be my favorite painting on the Iceberg. It's a gruesome scene of two polar bears apparently devouring the remains of human explorers. The canvas shows the bears attacking the camp, but also displays bones and the remains of a sail and mast of a boat. The work, painted by Edwin Henry Landseer, is a commentary on both the power of nature over man and a commentary on British imperialism. It was inspired by Franklin's lost expedition that disappeared in the Arctic in 1845. As cool as the painting is, the art itself isn't even the coolest part. This painting too is allegedly haunted. The painting is displayed at the University of London, but stories of it being cursed have existed as early as the 1920s, where an urban legend began to spread suggesting that a student stabbed themselves in the eye during a test, writing on the paper that the polar bears made me do it. Now, this death never actually happened, but the legend persisted, and by the 1960s, students suggested that anyone facing the painting during their exam would fail. Because of this, there's a tradition that a Union Jack always covers the painting whenever tests are proctored in the room, which is pretty funny. Sam Wolfe Connolly. Connolly is an artist born in 1988 who's created a variety of disturbing works. I won't go too in-depth into his portfolio, but I can share that he's made a lot of stuff involving animals or other bits of nature shown in an eerily disturbing way. It's definitely impressive. The Rain Woman. The Rain Woman is a painting by Ukrainian artist Svetlana Telets in 1996. It's an expressionist painting of a woman in black, which is pretty cool, but the story that goes with it's so much more fascinating. The creation of the painting was not easy for the artist, who described feeling like she was being watched as she painted, and saying that the paintbrush just moved itself. The story then goes on that after it was displayed, it was purchased by a woman who returned it to the artist just 2 weeks later, saying that with the painting, she didn't feel alone in her apartment. 2 more buyers did the same thing. Finally, around 2008, it was purchased by Sergei Skachko, who owned it but eventually moved it out of his home. To this day, it's not known if Sergei still owns the painting, and it hasn't been seen by the public for a long while. People who own it describe it bringing on feelings of dread, nightmares, helplessness, and distress, and these feelings might even be shared by people who simply look at the piece. Ivan the Terrible and his son Ivan. This painting by Ila Repin depicts Ivan the Terrible holding his son after he killed him in a fit of rage. In death, the son seems to forgive the father, and the father shows a look of crazed regret. This painting from the late 1800s is one of Russia's most controversial paintings, mainly because no one really knows how little Ivan died. It may have been due to illness, but there's a largely supported theory that he was actually beaten to death by his father, like the painting shows. Many people don't want to admit that Ivan killed his own son, so for that reason the painting's actually been vandalized multiple times, but it still remains on display in Russia today. The Drowning Dog. No, I'm not actually going to show you a picture of a dog dying, fortunately. The Drowning Dog is another piece from Goya, one of the ones painted straight onto his walls. Like all of these black paintings, we don't have a clear interpretation for it, but this piece is moving nonetheless. It can be interpreted as a soul just barely keeping their head above water. Taking this simple observation further, many seem to suggest that this painting depicts man's struggles against perpetual malevolent forces. At this point, the only way for this dog to be saved would be from some divine intervention. The Great Red Dragon and the Beast from the Sea. This painting by William Blake, made in 1805, shows a scene from one of the most fascinating books of the Bible, Revelation. This painting shows a battle between good and evil, with the 7-headed dragon, the devil, crouching above the sea beast who wields a sword and torch. This painting is slightly disturbing, but incredibly beautiful, and is part of a biblical series by Blake titled The Great Red Dragon Paintings. The 3 others, titled The Great Red Dragon and the Woman Clothed in Sun, The Great Red Dragon and the Woman Clothed with the Sun, and The Number of the Beast is 666, are all equally horrifying. Revelation paintings and artwork are an incredible subject themselves, and if you're fascinated by these biblical horrors, I really encourage you to watch some of these videos to go into them in further detail. David with the Head of Goliath. This is another Caravaggio piece, and boy did this guy love to paint severed heads. It depicts David from the famous David and Goliath myth holding the dismembered head of the man he had just defeated in battle, though you can clearly see in his face that the experience has weighed on him quite a bit. This disturbing yet fascinating and humanistic take on David here is quite fascinating. The 3rd of May, 1808. The 3rd of May, 1808 is a Goya painting from 1814 created in an effort to celebrate Spain's resistance from Napoleon's army in 1808. It depicts the scene of a firing squad, and it's also one of the first modern paintings to depict the horror of war with guns. It became an inspiration to so many anti-war paintings, including Picasso's Guernica. The Smiling Spider. The Smiling Spider by Odilon Redon is a strange lithograph, being that of a spider with an eerily human face. He's got many other pieces like this, either spiders or cyclops-like creatures or other weird things with human heads. These noirs are very cryptic, and likewise people have searched for a meaning to pin down to the Smiling Spider for years. The artist was passionate about the natural sciences, as well as dreams and psychology, leading many to believe that the diagram is some sort of nightmare mix between science and fiction. Regardless of what it means, it's very creepy. Murder of Ohagi by Sai Saburo. This painting by Yoshitoshi is part of a collection titled 28 Famous Murders with Verse, a series depicting violent murders and torture from the 1860s. This one is particularly disturbing though, showing a man killing his beloved based on a scene in a play. This collection actually started a whole movement of similarly violent art in Japan. Souvenir of Civil War, 1848. This painting by Jean-Louis-Ernest Maisonneuve shows a graphic display of dead rioters who were killed by troops in Paris in 1848 during the French Revolution. While the painting isn't all too frightening, it's accurately depicting the horrors of the government slaughtering its own people, and was a very successful piece because of this. The Fall of the Damned. The Fall of the Damned is a legendary 1620 painting by Peter Paul Rubin. It shows damned souls being led by the Archangel Michael into hell. There's really not much I can say to qualify this painting. It's incredible and it's been very significant in terms of biblical paintings, but it is certainly quite disturbing. The Cyclops. Another piece by Redon, this is the Cyclops, and what a horrifying Cyclops it is. It peers over a nude woman in this trippy mash of colors which make a great painting, but look at this guy, it's horrifying. The strangely realistic eye plopped onto the face with no mouth or any effort to really make any other facial features is just crazy looking. It really stands out of place with other art at the time. This painting, the title of which being the French word for scooter ankle, was created by Edouard Manet during the final years of his life. It is, by all means, his most grim painting, literally depicting someone who had just passed. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one for YouTube guideline reasons, but I can certainly tell you that it's a disturbing painting. Gagose. Gagose are creatures in Japanese mythology, and while there are plenty of depictions of them, I believe this is the one that the creator of the Iceberg is referring to. The artist here is unknown, but the depiction of the mythical creature is no less horrifying. Gallowgate Lard. Okay, this one is super creepy. This is Gallowgate Lard, a 1995 painting by Ken Curie, who, inspired by his own upbringing, often made art designed to comment on the brutal lives of people living in urban poverty. He refers to this work as a self-portrait that simultaneously symbolizes the struggle for survival. How it really does that, I have no clue, but all I can say is it's horrifying. Spanish Dancer at the Moulin Rouge. This is a 1905 painting by Giovanni Boldini. And I'll be straight with y'all, I'm not qualified to analyze art. I don't really know what makes this guy disturbing. It does look a bit strange, showing a dancer entwined with this spirit thing, but it really isn't that disturbing to me. I don't know, what do you guys think? Corpus Hypercubus. Corpus Hypercubus, or Crucifixion by Salvador Dali, is a 1954 painting showing the crucifixion of Christ in an atypical fashion. Dali did this with a style he called nuclear mysticism, a blend of geometry and science with Catholicism. Christ is held on a geometric cross, with no signs of injury while someone stands below him in devotion, a woman modeled after Dali's wife. There's definitely something unsettling about this work. Maybe it's the trance-like dream state that this world seems to take place in, or maybe it's just the fact that Christian symbols mixed with this style of art seems out of place. Either way, I can definitely see why this is disturbing. Miss Muriel Belcher. Miss Muriel Belcher, a painting from Francis Bacon from 1959, is definitely one of his most disturbing works. Bacon actually did a bunch of paintings of Muriel Belcher, a woman who created the Colony Room Club, a club in London. This one in particular, though, seems to be the most disturbing. Oddly enough, these weren't supposed to be insulting, and in fact, Bacon and Belcher were really good friends. though for some reason Bacon decided to paint her like a caveman here. Painting 1946. Going on with another Bacon piece, we have the aptly titled Painting. But this isn't your average Crayola canvas, kiddos. There's so much to unpack here. The first thing I'd quickly observe is this looks like one of those images where you can't actually name a single thing in the picture. You can definitely see ideas in these objects, like this headless man wearing a suit, or this thing which looks to be like an animal flayed open, but it's not quite right. There's just something wrong with everything. This painting was made right after World War II, and it's almost certainly criticizing someone, specifically the man in the suit right here looking like a British politician. Whatever it means, it's very disturbing. Figure with meat. Another Bacon painting, in fact another Pope-related Bacon painting from 1954, shows a disturbed version of the Pope sitting in a butcher shop, or at least around butchered meat. You can also see that he's been held in a glass chamber. This painting again shows a perversion of an authority figure, which really comes out to be horrifying. Deterioration of mind over matter. This is a 1976 painting by Otto Rapp showing a decomposing human head either trapped in or revealing a birdcage as it decomposes. It's pretty obvious as to why this one is so disturbing. Jack the Ripper's bedroom. At first, you might not notice anything disturbing about this painting by Walker Richard Sickert, but this painting is actually modeled after the artist's own apartment, as the landlady there told him that she suspected the previous tenant was actually Jack the Ripper. This dark figure could be the Ripper's spirit, but at the same time, the lack of clarity makes it all the more disturbing. Perhaps it speaks on the paranoia the artist might have felt knowing that the killer could have lived in his very room. Wandjina. So Wandjina are Australian Aboriginal cloud and rain spirits often depicted in art, even rock art thousands of years ago. There are plenty of different drawings of these spirits that are all disturbing in some way or another. Wandjina are often speculated to be aliens, and can you blame people for suggesting that? They absolutely look like aliens. I wouldn't say I'm disturbed by this art, but I would definitely say that without context, these guys are pretty creepy. The Cave of Hands. The Cave of Hands is a series of rock art sites in Argentina where hundreds of different handprints have been stenciled onto the walls. It's some of the oldest evidence of South American tribes, which actually led to this site becoming a UNESCO heritage site. But I gotta say, for as cool as this is, there's something just a bit off here. I don't know, maybe it has to do with the fact that it's hundreds of red handprints splattered onto a wall. Honestly though, this one is much more cool than it is disturbing. Summary execution under the Moorish kings of Granada. So for anyone who doesn't know, a summary execution is just an execution without a fair trial. This Renault painting from 1869 shows what Europeans usually thought about Moors, specifically in Granada, a chunk of Spain that, for a time, was under Muslim control. The idea here is that the Moors are portrayed as ruthless, executing their own people, which aligns more with European sentiment than describing an actual event. The painting is pretty disturbing and graphic. The Broken Column. The Broken Column is a self-portrait by Frida Kahlo. While the painting itself isn't scary or anything, it's much more disturbing when you understand the backstory here. Kahlo suffered a horrible traffic accident when she was just 18 years old, and much of her art tries to show the psychological and physical pain she was in. The Broken Column was painted in 1944, right after she had a particularly painful spinal surgery. She's covered in bandages, has nails all over her body, and has a metallic spine that seems to be collapsing and cracking. Eye in the Village. Eye in the Village is an oil-on-canvas painting by Belarusian French artist Marc Chagall created in 1911. It's a cubist work showing trippy figures overlapping one another in a strange world. As you might have guessed from the title, this painting has to do with the artist's hometown and how he relates to it, but is often interpreted as a demonstration of the culture clash between Eastern Europeans, specifically involving a fairy tale. Hide and Seek. Hide and Seek is a painting made in the early 1940s showing all sorts of figures surrounding a woman, painted with extremely trippy colors. I don't even know how to describe this one. Somehow these figures look like infants, but they also seem like they're decaying. And bits of the background are made of human hands and toes. All around, it's just a very creepy piece. Quite interesting, though. The Examination. The Examination is a painting by Wayne Barlow, a sci-fi writer and artist. He has a whole series called Hell with some extremely disturbing pieces in it. It's sort of his own reimagination of what hell might look like, and it's really unique. One of these pieces, though, the examination, might just be the most disturbing of them all. Barlow had this to say about the work. While souls are treated as a resource by demons in an unthinkable number of ways in hell, a true understanding of them as once-living organisms on a physical level is absent. The fact that Lucifer went to war in large part because of them has created a curiosity that many demons find irresistible. So basically what's being depicted here are demons prodding at an unfortunate soul who made their way into hell. I would certainly define that as disturbing. Lágrimas de Sangre. Lágrimas de Sangre is a horrifying expressionist piece. It seems to show a disturbed person desperately attempting to silence themselves, but from doing what? Exclaiming at a terrible sight, perhaps? We obviously don't know, but it doesn't take much effort to realize that this painting is quite disturbing. Human Laundry. Human Laundry is a 1945 painting depicting victims of concentration camps being washed before they were admitted to a hospital to prevent the spread of typhus. The contrast between their emaciated bodies and those of the nurses is particularly stunning, but the painting does an incredible job at highlighting the atrocities of the Holocaust. Very disturbing indeed, but powerful. Myself as a Dead Clown. Myself as a Dead Clown is a 2007 painting from Joel Peter Witkin showing a dead body, pretty much confirmed to be that of the artist, laying on a table. With strange clown features and dark colors, it's definitely disturbing. Yang Xiaobin's art. Yang Xiaobin is a contemporary Chinese artist known mostly for his portraits of individuals designed to comment on the political situation in China. While I'm not well versed enough on art commentary or Chinese politics to really analyze every one of these pieces, it's clear that a lot of his work is grotesque, and these figures look almost ghoulish. Teatro de Muerte. Teatro de Muerte, or Theater of Death, is another piece from Witkin. It's a skull and a head, without a body. It's pretty disturbing. Well, everyone, on that note, we have finished the iceberg. That's it for the art stuff. I hope you enjoyed this iceberg, and I'm really glad you stuck around for the whole video. As you know, I'm a small channel, and I would really appreciate it if you subscribed for more similar content. Now for some channel announcements. I'm very excited to announce that we now have a SeedButter Discord server, which you can join using the link in the description. This is long overdue, and I'm super glad to be able to connect with you guys this way. And moving forward, the Discord is going to be where all of you decide what icebergs get covered. As you might have noticed if you've been subscribed for a while, I've been doing less and less icebergs recently, and I'm beginning a policy that unless I really fall in love with an iceberg, I won't do any that aren't desired by the audience. And the best way for you to share with me and vote amongst yourselves with regard to what icebergs you want me to cover will be on the Discord server. Besides that, I have a lot more random original content coming up, which I think will be pretty interesting, albeit slightly all over the place. I have to apologize for not uploading for quite a while. Life got in the way, as it often does, but I can say I'm going to try to commit to a relatively solid schedule of an upload every other Friday at 5:30 p.m., with some bonus videos sprinkled in on Fridays in between. But in general, you can safely expect 2 uploads a month. Alright, that was a lot of talking about the channel, so I'm going to finish up now. Please make sure to join the Discord if you're a fan, and if you're new here and still listening, please subscribe to support my small channel. I definitely think we can get to 10,000 subs by the end of this year. Thank you for sticking around, and I'll see you guys soon. Have a great night.